Hello fellow heroes, I'm Action Smacchan, that 2-in-1 hero made up of a virus from the 70s and a guy who likes to watch things. And I just have to talk about Ultraman Rising, the new Ultraman movie that just landed on Netflix. I just finished watching it. I went in mostly blind. Of course, I still saw like a couple of like promo images. I knew that it had something to do with some sort of baby kaiju that was kind of adorable. And it has this very interesting stylized look to it. It doesn't really look like anime. It looks a whole lot more like something animated from like Hollywood. Not saying that's a bad thing. I like my Hollywood produced animations. I still like my Western animation in spite of being an anime character myself. But yeah, the visual style is really cool. It does mix in a whole lot of kind of Japanese media influence, occasionally taking kind of manga shots in some action scenes, which honestly is a very anime thing to do. Part of the anime identity is taking composition philosophy from manga and putting it in an animated composition. So that in that sense, it is a little bit anime. I also thought that the name choice for the main characters was kind of funny. They chose like names that are very digestible for a Western audience. The main character's name is Ken, which also happens to be an American and an also Japanese name. What else is a name? There's a There's a kaiju named Emmy, which sounds like Emmy. Again, as a movie, I think it's a really good movie. I saw like some comments on it that says this might be like the best superhero movie in a long time, and I mean I could see that. I could see it being seen as some of the best. I mean, granted, like my favorite animated superhero movie, or maybe even like my favorite superhero movie in a long time, would probably be the Infinity Force movie. Infinity Force, Farewell My Friend. If you haven't watched that, boy, go watch that. I think I've like recommended it a few times on the channel. If you haven't watched Infinity Force, what are you doing with yourself? Go watch Infinity Force. If you liked this show, like if you like this movie, maybe you would like Infinity Force, because Infinity Force just goes that hard. But I'm not here to talk about Infinity Force. Gosh, there was so much. There was just so much in this movie. It's like almost 2 hours long. Like 15 minutes of it is credits at the end. So it's like as far as like the actual feature itself, it's like an hour and 45-ish. So it's a pretty meaty movie. It's not like 3 hours, but it's a pretty good dense chunk. I really liked the I'm not really done talking about like the visual elements of the movie itself, and just kind of some of the sort of like almost anime qualities to it. There was a large emphasis on the eyes and the character designs, and there are a lot of shots in the movie that is focused on the eyes. And I think that comes a lot from the philosophy that the eyes are the windows to the soul. I feel like that's kind of tossed around a lot when Westerners talk about Japanese media. I don't think Japanese media actually outwardly talks about it or mentions it in their philosophies necessarily, but it is something that is just kind of ingrained in the media. It is a lot of what drives the design of anime characters. Whether people know it or not, they do use the emphasis on the eyes so that you could get a sense of how a character is feeling without actually having to animate it. And that is again used a whole lot, not just as a design philosophy in this movie, but it seems to be kind of more of a motif. Because they play with the sincerity or the innocence of a child, their unshielded eyes, a lot. in the composition. That, like, if you see a lot of the shots of like some flashbacks from I'm gonna keep on getting his name wrong. I think it's Dr. Onoda, the antagonist. When we see flashbacks for him, well, they're not really flashbacks. It's actually diegetically there. He's looking at old footage, but you'll see that we are looking directly at the flowery eyes of his child, or when Ami's little girl gets in Ken's face. There's a whole lot of emphasis on the eyes, and even when we are getting actual flashbacks of Kenji, we do tend to look at his eyes. And even when we look at Ultraman, Kenji as Ultraman, in his Ultraman form, they do manage to make the eyes a chief form of expression, because it is hard for the design of Ultraman to be to have facial expressions. Historically, Ultraman and a lot of Kamen Rider and Tokusatsu stuff, they have to use a whole lot of body language to show the personality of the characters. But when you're dealing with animation, you kind of have to have some subtlety, some reliance on having facial expressions, in addition, of course, to the bodily stuff, the bodily expressions. But they did manage to give Ultraman. Did they just call him Ultraman? Maybe he's Ultraman Kenji. Oh, is he Ultraman Rising? I'm gonna call him Ultraman Rising. He's Rising-san now. But yeah, they added, like, to the design the pupil, the light pupils that I guess Ultraman kind of sort of maybe has in his design. But I think it was a pretty good idea. They also use sunglasses to shield emotions, to hide themselves, as like a way to hide themselves, even when in the public eye, even when in front of people. I think this was pretty important, because Kenji did it in the beginning of the movie. He was wearing sunglasses a lot. He was going into interviews with sunglasses on, and then he would still keep them on when he's like by himself, kind of hiding away his emotions, kind of running away from his dad and how he feels about his family, not wanting to talk about that. And eventually he starts keeping them off when he starts creating his attachment to baby Emmy. But you also see the sunglasses on when the antagonist, Dr. Onoda, puts them on, and only when he takes them off is when he's vulnerably looking back at recordings of his family. And again, I think it plays to the innocence, kind of this human connection of emotion, I guess. But yeah, so that was a really cool motif to be able to catch, just in the visual elements. Again, some very stylish stuff. Actually using the swirly Ultraman paint that you get from the old title cards from like Ultra Q and original Ultraman Showa series. You know what I mean? The swirly paint. Actually kind of using those as a kind of ways of expressing Ultraman, intense Ultraman emotions. Just having that as like a visual element in the background, showing intensity, I thought was cool. Maybe even like transformation, because it was like used a little bit in one of Kenji's transformations. That was just cool. It's a cool nod to the original source material. I do feel like the people who were on this project had to have liked Ultraman to be able to make this movie happen, to be able to understand that Ultraman is not just about destroying monsters. Which from an outside perspective, it looks like Ultraman's just out there fighting monsters, because when we look back on it, on all the action scenes, it just looks like he's just blowing up kaiju. There is something kind of Western about the writing, like the way Kenji's character is a little bit Tony Stark at the beginning, conceited, self-absorbed, but it wasn't without reason, right? They do give him enough development for his character for us to get a sense where his character is coming from, his conflicts, and to see how he's not just really Tony Stark, but it feels very Iron Man coded at the beginning. We have all this technology that's just that's very Iron Man like futuristic technology, even though it's not something that Kenji built himself. It's still very the robot Nina, is it Nina or Mina? Either way, the AI is very Jarvis-like. I know that we have it. We have AI technology kind of improving in that direction. It feels very made to be digestible for Western audiences, and I'm not saying that as a bad thing. It's just something I kind of noticed, something I kind of felt. And again, I feel like Ultraman as a franchise is trying to create more of a Western audience, and I think that's a pretty good move to ease new viewers into the idea, the ethos of Ultraman, in first introducing him in kind of a way that would be digestible for audiences that already like probably Marvel superheroes. And thinking back, Ultraman is kind of a Marvel property right now, with Marvel doing Ultraman comics. I only read one trade paperback of the first run. It was pretty alright. Speaking of which, they do show Ultraman as kind of like a genetic thing. It seems like the main character inherited his ability to transform into an Ultra from his father. Like, technically speaking, I guess it makes perfect sense within Ultraman lore, greater Ultraman lore, because Ultras do tend to come from the same land of light, and they're just genetically given birth to each other for the most part. But what I do like that I think this movie did really well is the theme of family, repairing familial bonds, with Kenji getting separated from his family because of Ultraman, because of kaiju stuff. And that being reflected back at him with the antagonist, whose family was destroyed by the reliance on Ultraman, which led to extreme prejudice against kaiju, and also kind of against Ultraman too by the end of it. But also having Kenji's character healed by the responsibilities of having to raise a new child. And kind of going back to Blazar, that was a thing in Blazar. The importance of family was a thing in Blazar. But having it as like an actual as the large part of Kenji's character development, I felt like was another thing that kind of made it feel more Western. And then there was kind of a little bit of a daddy's daycare, Vin Diesel being the pacifier or whatever. The sense of the super cool superhero guy having to deal with Babby. Again, it's a very Hollywood thing, but it is, again, worked really well into this movie, I think. But what else? I feel like I was able to catch some background music with like some Vocaloid tracks. Like they used Miku in doing just like some vocalization. As an old Vocaloid fan, I just kind of appreciate just having that in in things here and there. But yeah, all that being said, I thought this movie was pretty fantastic. I'm glad I watched it. I'm glad we have it. I'm glad it was good. And it looks good. And it's written nice. But it does beg the question now that I watched this and a whole lot of other Ultraman media. Who is the best Emmy? Let me know in the comments, and also if you had fun along with me, go ahead and give this video a like and share it with a friend so that they too can become a fellow hero. And as always, thank you all so much for being here, and I will see you with the next Smacchan Pat adventure.